Mindfulness is both a skill and a way of being. My name is Renee Metty, and I'm a mindfulness educator. In 2010, I founded the Cove School, which brings mindfulness practices to preschoolers. Our program serves children ages 2.5 to 5 years old, and we weave mindfulness practices throughout their entire day. I first stumbled across mindfulness for children in 2010 when I was looking for skills that would help them in their daily lives. That quickly led to my own personal discovery of mindfulness, which has had such an impact on how the school has developed over the years.
I'm feeling happy.
For the little ones, mindfulness is innate for them. They're open, they're curious, they don't have any of that conditioning that we as adults have. It has been really joyful to watch and learn so much. I learn every day through the children, through my own practice. I've learned that there's a lot of play that I lost. I didn't really know how to play as an adult, and I think many of us can resonate with that. And so to be able to watch children play around with these concepts, mindfulness can be a lot of fun. We do an activity with mindful seeing. Like, I see a dragon, I see a unicorn. Whereas adults, we're typically scanning the room to see what we really see. Children at this age, they go off into their imagination. And so it's a really important piece of bringing mindfulness to both children and adults, that we keep this element of play and curiosity. That preschool age is the time where we're starting to identify different emotions, anger, happy, sad. And I think what makes us a little different is that we start connecting it to the body, so that they're aware that their emotions come from a place in their body first before they even identify that it's an emotion. Then we'll say, where do you feel anger in your body? Do you notice anything? And so it's really just starting to plant seeds and look at the world a little differently. Beautiful part of the process that I've been able to observe is how children are able to just let things go. And for me, that is my greatest teacher. I try and bring a lot of play to it because it's about being curious, it's about being open, it's about trying again. I really look at this mindfulness process as kind of coming back to childhood.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 2018 Preschool Mindfulness Summit. I'm really happy to have Renee Metty here with us today. Renee is the founder of Cove Preschool, which is framed on mindfulness, so we'll be hearing more about that. And she's also the director of With Pause. So looking forward to hearing about those two different companies and about her journey into mindfulness. So welcome, Renee.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. So why don't we just start off with you telling us a little bit about how you came into this journey of mindfulness yourself.
Yeah. It was, I started my preschool, well, I actually started as an in-home daycare in 2008. So I would have childcare for my own children while I tried to go start a wedding planning business.
Right, okay.
And I had left the teaching in the public school setting after the birth of my first child, and I vowed I would never go back to teaching again. And then started the in-home daycare, and that went really well until the economy crashed, which was about a year and a half in. And so about 6 months into the daycare world, I realized that I really wanted to transition our daycare into more of a preschool type setting. And so when the economy crashed, enrollment went down, hours went down, and so I thought that was a good time to transition into preschool. And so 2010 is when I started the preschool, and mindfulness came in. I was, you think of education as this helping profession, but when you're running a school, it is a business, right? And I do have a business background. So it essentially was startup mode because I was the teacher, I was the director, I was the bookkeeper, the
everything, yes,
janitor. I wore all hats. I had 3 small children. My daughter was born January 21st of 2010, and I opened on January 4th of 2010.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was in our home. And so I literally gave birth up in the bedroom in the morning, and I was down. I mean, she was my third, granted. I was downstairs for a couple hours teaching that afternoon.
Crazy. That's dedication.
Sometimes necessity, and I did have an assistant, but I did feel like I needed to be there as the founder. I needed to be there for a little bit. And so I have a very supportive system at home, but needless to say, I had 3 children under the age of 3 when I started preschool, and I was just moving at a pace faster than you can imagine. But at the same time, I didn't think there was anything wrong with the way I was doing things. I actually prided myself on my ability to hold so much in my capacity, the ability to stay calm in very stressful situations. But around me, what I saw were a lot of family and friends going through some mild depression and anxiety because of the economic crash and either losing jobs or worried about losing jobs. And so what I thought was, I have these children who are just so open, and we always say that they're sponges, and they're just open to anything. So I started doing just a little bit of research on what can I provide for them at the preschool level that when they were adults, they could handle that kind of baggage a little better. I just kept coming across mindfulness, and I didn't know a whole lot about mindfulness. A school I worked at brought some in years ago, and at the time I was like, oh, that's hippy-dippy stuff. I don't need that. Right? And so, so I did a little research. So really what my journey started as was curriculum for children. So I brought it into the school. And the type of person I am, as I get into things and I saw the results with the children, and it just worked really well for our preschool, that they just came out with a certification program. And so I bought the MindBE curriculum because I could get it on Amazon. It was cheap, and I just started using it. And then I had come across Mindful Schools, and they were based out of California. And at the time when I found it, I think everything was in person, so I just couldn't make my way down to California. And then they came out with an online component. And so as soon as they did that, I jumped on
that too.
It's amazing. And so I did their certification. They're year-long. And that, for me, that's where I really consider my own journey to start. When I was teaching the curriculum, there was a little bit of conversation in the field because it was fairly new to education and bringing it to the Western world in the medical field in the 70s, but to education, it really only started in the early 2000s. And so there was talk about, does the adult need a practice to bring mindfulness into education? And at the time, as a perfectionist, type A person, I was like, they're 3, no. Because I wanted it done yesterday. I didn't want to have to wait and develop my own practice before I brought it to kids, because I was already bringing it to kids, and I thought it was amazing. And so I'm like, well, if they're like older, 8, 9, 10, I can see because they're more verbal and things can come up. And I'm like, they're 3. What could happen? But what happened was, when I went through the year-long program, the opening week was in person and the ending week was in person, and everything else was online. And part of that opening week was the first 3 days were in silence.
Right.
And so my practice, because when you take the prerequisite courses, that it's really about like getting your practice going. And so mine was pretty intermittent. I had good intentions, but I was busy. I had kids. I had all kinds of excuses. And so went through that 3.5 days of silence, and I literally emerged transformed. Like I was able to, they talked about it before we went into silence about something that settles your nervous system. You know, and so
Right.
when you're breathing, that's activating the parasympathetic side of your system.
Yeah.
And a metaphor that was used by one of our teachers who said, sometimes you can get this sense like you're moving through molasses.
Right.
And so I felt the massive shift in my nervous system. But what was so compelling for me is that the place that we were at had sleeping quarters and workshops at one end, and then it was like a 10-minute walk to where we ate. And the day we were coming out of silence, the night before, a business group had come in, so they weren't not in silence.
Right.
And so that third morning, I was walking back from breakfast about 8:20.
Right.
Breakfast closed at 8:30. And it wasn't until I was met with this gentleman down at the end of the path who was kind of that, you know, that running walking thing that we do when we're in a hurry. And he was kind of rushing towards me. And it was a wall of energy that stopped me dead in my tracks. And I was like, whoa, that was me like 2.5 days ago.
Yeah.
And it was in that moment I'm like, I am never going back to that speed again.
Right.
Because what happened was during these periods of silence, and when I mean periods, they were long periods from like 7 a.m. till we were 30-minute practice of sitting and then alternating with walking from 7 a.m. till 9 p.m. at night. But the 3 days was consistent silence with no reading, no writing, very little eye contact.
Yeah.
And the system just has this ability to allow it to rest and digest.
Yes.
And so that feeling is amazing. And the clarity that you can get from that is really unexplainable. And so when I saw that gentleman coming towards me and I was met with that, I was like, whoa. And over the course of three days, I also realized I didn't walk anywhere, like not in my house. I was constantly like rushing, you know, to do, you know, throw the laundry in or cook dinner for the kids or send a quick email.
Right.
So that's really was my journey. And it was in that moment where I was like, yeah, I totally get it.
Yeah.
The impact you can have on other people, particularly children and parents and families, when you come from a place of your own practice and presence is totally different.
Yeah. I think it is, I mean, it makes perfect sense, doesn't it, when you look back on it? But I'm also
I laugh at myself, like, oh,
type A person. So it's like, well, oh yes, we just want to get this done. We don't have time for all this silence. But yeah, I think it's a journey that everyone has to go on themselves and discover, really, isn't it? So, so that's wonderful. So, I didn't realize you had 3 kids as well. So
there's 7, 9, and 11 now, so we're in a little bit of a sweet spot.
Right. Yes. Yeah. That's the nice age. Yeah. They're starting to be independent. And yeah. So tell us a little bit more about your school, the Cove Preschool, and about. So, are you using the Mindful Schools curriculum, or is it more mindful teaching, or how are you bringing mindfulness into the school? And how are you working with the teachers there? Are they coming in with already trained in this area, or do you have your own programs that you train teachers in?
So when I started in 2010 and even 2008 to 2010 when I had the in-home daycare, the people that were drawn to me primarily based on the way the program was set up was more academic, was more like I was really striving to have the best preschool in the area. And by doing that, what it creates is a little bit of competition in the sense of parents wanting to get in and me looking at other preschools and how can I be better than those preschools, right? And then when I made the shift, I had to slowly transition because some of my parents were very like, okay, I need to get in the best preschool so I can get into the best elementary school so I can get into the best high school. And it's just this chain effect.
Wow, that's interesting. That's exactly what it's like.
And so I really had to transition. So it took a couple of years to just slowly transition. So I just started doing some of the mindfulness stuff, but not marketing it as much. Right. And so for me, it was really, really important that it wasn't just like insert curriculum here. It's time for mindfulness, right? And particularly with the experience that I had about the teachers having their own practice, for me it was really about the culture, and I really wanted the school to embody mindfulness, not just do the mindfulness games with kids. And so Montessori is I'm just a huge proponent of Montessori, and Montessori is inherently mindful. And so it's just a nice curriculum to bring together. So we're Montessori inspired. Which brings about the intentionality and the pace of like how we do things, respect in the community and respect for all living things. And so it creates a culture in the school already, right? So then so there is direct instruction. We start with the Mindful Schools curriculum, the 8-week program. But we're also weaving it and integrating it throughout the day. So it's really hard to find, like I even changed, we don't call our teachers teachers, we call them facilitators. We're facilitators of learning. And with mindfulness, mindfully, being called a mindful teacher, it's like, well, I'm not really teaching you anything. I'm just guiding you because you're experiencing So, so it is really hard to find facilitators that come in with a practice, right? It's already hard enough to find preschool teachers, let alone finding one that has a strong practice. So we train our staff. They all take mindfulness fundamentals, and then they all take the educator essentials. And then from that point, I'd be willing to pay for the year long if we felt like it was something that they were really embodying themselves. They're all open to taking fundamentals, and then if they're either slacking on it or I just see they're not totally into it, then if they want to move forward, they do it on their own. You can't make that.
Be mindful.
But we do our school opens at 8:30, and so everybody has to be done prepping and doing whatever they need to do at 8:25 at the very least, if not 8:20. And then there's just a quiet time in the school before the doors open.
That's nice.
So whether they want to sit either separately or together, or if they just want to sit and drink their coffee quietly, but there's an intentionality of like, all right, it's time to settle our system before opening the doors and chaos comes in.
I love that. That's great. Start off the day right. Exactly. Oh, sounds like a lovely place to work. So So tell us about some of the activities, the favorite activities that teachers are doing in the classrooms with kids that are bringing in mindfulness.
Well, there's so many more now than when I started. And even still, at the preschool level, everything starts kindergarten and up. So we're constantly having to adapt the curriculum. But especially when I go out and I train other teachers, for me, it's really important. Teachers are busy, right? And it's like they always struggle. The challenge in the classroom is time. And so for me, the application of mindfulness really is, I want it to be accessible and practical. So take what you're already doing and make it more mindfulness-based, right? And the simplest way to describe it for me is when they're doing something, ask them what they notice and where they feel it in their body. And so you start laying the foundation of noticing, of sensations, right? And so we do this with adults too, but like the rubbing of the hands, And then noticing that tingly or sparkly, they always say, I feel sparkly.
Yeah.
And then you just start weaving that into the day, right?
Yeah.
And then so when you're playing freeze dance,
Yes.
and they freeze, right? And they do some crazy thing and they're standing on one leg or have two hands on the ground and one leg in the air.
Yeah.
Instead of just turning the radio or the music back on, then you say, what do you notice? What do you notice with the leg that's on the ground? What do you notice with the leg that's up in the air? And so you can get into the body and sensations, but you can also get into the mind and what they're thinking. Are you super excited for the song to stop? Or are you feeling super like anxious that like you're afraid you're gonna fall over? You know, you can just start getting into the nature of mind with them at a very simple but applicable level.
Yeah. I think that's great. And I think sometimes when, like myself, when I go into schools and people are like, oh, it's this huge thing like mindfulness, and you know, and they don't realize that it's actually just little moments that can really make a difference if those are consistent and done throughout the day, really. So I know parents also, I have a group, and a lot of parents say like, I don't know where to start. I don't know, like, what should I do? And you're like, just take a breath. So what advice do you give to the parents that come to this school that maybe don't have any background in mindfulness and are obviously they're interested in it, or they wouldn't send their child to your school? But do you run parent workshops or have training sessions for the parents, or how does that work?
Yeah, I used to have some series, like a 6-week series for parents. I'm working on trying to find a way to do it again through social media, because I started traveling quite a bit to bring it to other schools and into business. And so it was really hard for me to be in one place for 8 weeks in a row where I could meet up with them. And so I'm trying to do similar in our own practice, is do short snippets, like on Facebook Live. We have a private Facebook group. And reaching out to them through that. So I'll probably start maybe a monthly thing on Facebook Live after the new year, and then maybe a quarterly like Zoom call-in session.
Because parents don't have time, right?
Well, and that's the thing. Sometimes when you do like an in-person parent night, is great because they get to get out of the house, but they all have little kiddos. So it might be nice after they go to bed that they can either watch it live or they can just watch it after the kids go to bed. And so doing more online courses is something that I've been kind of toying around with. But just for the daily practical, you know, parenting advice or, you know, kind of guideline is it's really about self-awareness, right? And so it's noticing what are the things about your kiddo that are really irritating to you. Because what's irritating to me is not necessarily irritating to another parent. Right? And then as you slowly start noticing those things, there's this just sense of like, oh, not really my child's fault. You know, it's like this projection of like how you think you're supposed to be as a parent. It really all comes back to the self. And that's a really hard concept. We were talking earlier, right? Like parents will come and be like, can you do this mindfulness thing to my child? Or can you use mindfulness to fix my child? And it really is about the process and the journey of parenting, right? And being able to sit there with the tantruming child without getting so triggered that you're also losing it.
Exactly.
And it's going to happen. Like I tell people all the time, you're not going to be a mindful you're not going to have a mindful child. You're not going to be a mindful parent. You're not going to be a mindful teacher. You're going to have moments of mindfulness. So like when you were saying before, it's little moments, and oftentimes it's in the very mundane. It's not the big like, oh, I've done it, I got there, and you know. Exactly. It's just a process, and it's a process of noticing. And then really, what's important to me is now that you've noticed something, what's the action you're going to take? What are you going to do about it? And then there's balancing it with compassion, both for the child and then for yourself. Like, how judgmental are we of ourselves as parents and of other parents? You know, and that, I mean, if that's a gift I could give someone, is to take that judgment off of ourselves. Because that's driving all of our sometimes crazy behaviors.
And parents, I think parents, especially with young kids, really, you know, they're worried and they're not sure.
Especially those first-time parents.
They take, you know, put so much blame on themselves.
So much guilt.
That self-compassion is so important. So, so you've told us a bit, but tell us more about the benefits that you've seen in the children and the staff, I guess, at your and the parents at your preschool as a result of bringing in this journey of mindfulness.
Yeah, what's interesting is so to watch the community of my preschool shift in terms of the type of families that are drawn to us, and they either already have a practice or they're just interested in it. So then there's these underlying values of building community, of respect, of they're not all calm. I have lots of type A parents. I have, 2 working mom households. I have some stay-at-home moms, some stay-at-home dads. So there's quite a range of the type of family. But the underlying value is there's a focus on the individual as well as the group. And so there's just a very caring, compassionate community that's very supportive of our facilitators, which allows them to do their work and serve families and children in just a much stronger way. And so some of the things that we've seen with the children, what's really great now is that now I'm getting feedback from the elementary schools. Because it's been consistent enough now, right? They've graduated, they've been, I think our kiddos are maybe 5th grade now. And we have some schools that love us. And our school is really focused on the social emotional. Because I'm a huge believer, and I think there's even science to back this up, that children aren't going to learn anything if they're not emotionally regulated. Right? The science of mindfulness shows that. Like, if your prefrontal cortex is off the rails, then there's no thinking or decision. And so our kiddos come out very similar to the way Montessori children might look in a kind of traditional classroom, is that they just have a better sense of who they are and are confident in how they feel, and then they're able to communicate better. And so those are the biggest things. It's not like they don't throw tantrums or they don't get into arguments, right? But they're able to recognize, at 4 and 5, recognize the feelings of another person. And in some ways, you asked about body language earlier, using body language of children, because we use the language that we use as facilitators is, look at your friend. Well, how do you know, like, what do you think that person feels? Oh, they're sad or they're angry. How do you know that? Right? And so we're just slowly guiding them through some of the language that helps the thinking process around how to navigate those situations.
That's wonderful. I get so excited about this stuff because it's such a great gift, isn't it, to give this to preschoolers? I mean, just like imagine if everybody learned this when they were 3 and 4, and how it would change their lives. And I think it's so important. Before we started, we spoke a little bit about anxiety with kids and how mindfulness is helping children maybe lower some of that anxiety. So can you talk a little bit about any children that you've come across that are experiencing anxiety and how mindfulness has helped them?
Anxiety at this level with kiddos is so interesting. We don't have too many, but the thing that I've noticed about the children that have anxiety at this age is oftentimes it's a reflection of what's going on at home and the parent.
Yeah.
And so we feed children particularly are really good at feeding off of our energy.
Yeah.
Right? Which is why it's so important for a facilitator at our school to be able to have some presence and have some practice, because we are the intervention as the adult in the classroom. It doesn't matter what the curriculum is. And so what's so important too about embodying mindfulness in the school, and I'll tell parents this all the time, it's not super helpful if the only time you ask your child to breathe, or if you're breathing yourself, is when you're in that moment of rage or frustration or upset, right? It's the daily practice becomes really important, because what you're really doing is you're just creating a new habit.
Yeah.
And if you're not practicing when the system is regulated, you're not going to have access to it when the system is dysregulated, right? And so in terms of anxiety, the more we can practice with them and make that, it's just a tool, right? It's another tool. Sometimes it's going to sit in your room by yourself. Sometimes it's hugging your stuffed animal. Sometimes it's taking a breath. Sometimes it's doing some mindful seeing. I have a lot of trauma training and resilience building. And one of the things that we do is orientation. So looking around the room to kind of break yourself out of those cycles. And so just teaching them these different tools on a day-to-day basis, that when they're in that moment of anxiety or fear or worry, you can tap into it, because the connections are already made. And that goes for the adults too.
Yeah, it's so important, the regular practice, isn't it? Not you can do it once a week and then check it off on the box. And so, okay, so let's we just have a few more minutes. So tell us a little bit about your company with Pause, and what kind of things you're doing with that.
So mindfulness for me started with the kiddos, and then the parents were like, "What's this mindfulness thing you're doing?" So I started doing the parenting workshops. And then they had jobs and that were very stressful, and lives that were very stressful. So then I started going into business. So with Pause then became the adult of my work. And so I work with all kinds of people. In the beginning, it was just working with anyone that would listen and that was interested. I was just trying to get mindfulness out to as many people as possible. And then I added the body language training component, because in my training with teachers specifically, I was talking a lot about the nonverbal communication we're doing as we walk into the classroom, as we and that what kind of impact that had. So it was just a nice blend. And so now I specifically work with leaders, so business, entrepreneurs, and then teachers or leaders in education. So my focus is getting more narrow. And then more recently, like kind of my old self, the hustler, the high performer, the person that thinks that like, oh, this is really great that I can actually manage all of this. And so that's my kind of most narrow. So, it's been great. And I teach some seniors now. I'm teaching a senior citizens class, which has been amazing.
Great. And I just wanted, I can't remember if I mentioned at the beginning about the video now, but if I didn't, Renee's made a beautiful video of preschoolers that we're going to show on the Mindfulness Summit. So can you just tell us a little bit about how what made you make the video? And I mean, really beautifully done. And it really captures, preschool mindfulness. It's a great video. So how did you come up with it, and what was the process there?
I don't think I mentioned this in the beginning, but when the school came about, I always tell people, like, the school found me. I had no intention of ever having a school. And I feel the same way about the film. I, more and more, particularly with my mindfulness journey, but this is something that was innate for me, is that I go a lot by intuition and my gut. And I make a lot of decisions in business. Like, it's just a feeling, like I just know. You know, it just doesn't always pencil out on the Excel spreadsheet. But the film was the same thing. On my Facebook feed was a parent that my kiddos went to school with years ago, and I watched her transition into photography and videography.
Okay.
Her films, she was starting to do these really short films, like 1 to 3 minute films. And
Right.
most of them were around artists and creativity,
Okay.
people like painters and
Yeah.
even some mediums I don't even hadn't heard of before.
Right.
And it was just a draw. And I finally reached out to her and I said, I don't know what this is going to look like. I don't really know what I want, but I feel like I want to capture preschool and mindfulness in a film.
Yeah.
One, because it's really hard to imagine what it looks like for people,
Yeah.
because it just wasn't out there much. And then I just loved her style. And so she's like, I'm actually transitioning out of film, going into fine portrait photography. And she's like, but I love what you're doing in schools. She said, so let's just meet. And so we met, and within minutes, we were like, yeah, we got to make this happen.
We're doing this. Yeah.
Yeah. So I told her, I said, you know, I want your best work. I'm not putting a timeline on this. And so it took, you know, almost a year and a half, but between all the filming and then the back and forth and the editing and in between her projects and my project.
Right.
And so that's it. And then even when it was done, people were like, what are you going to do with it? I'm like, I didn't really have. Yeah. I didn't have some big strategy of what I was going to do with this film. I really just wanted to share with people what it was.
I really appreciate. I think it's a great tool for people like me who go into school and train teachers to show them, because as you say a lot, sometimes it's people's first exposure, this world of mindfulness, and just to give them an idea of what it is. I think preschool children are mindful anyways, aren't they? I mean, that's just how they are. They're curious and things, but the film just really captures it so beautifully. So thank you for making it for.
Yeah, I'm glad it's helpful.
And thank you, Renee, for coming on the Preschool Mindfulness Summit and sharing all your knowledge and very exciting projects that you're doing. It's been lovely chatting with you, and we'll put all the links to your websites and projects, so if people want to learn more, they can do that. And of course they can see the video and share the video with others as well, which I think will be a great thing.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been an honor to be invited.